Hello, this is Mike from Retro and Vintage Watches and Restorations, and this is the third part in the series of the Seiko 6309. In this part we will be rebuilding the motion side of the movement, and what you can see in front of you here is the parts that will be required. I will name these parts as we go through the build. You can also see the tools that I'll be using, which is mainly, there's a bit of Rodico there. We have the movement holder, a couple of screwdrivers and some tweezers. I have the loops should I need them, but that is basically it. I would like to put my disclaimer in at this point in time. I am not a professional, I'm just a hobbyist. This is all been self-taught, and I'm just trying to pass on what I've learned in the hope that some of you guys out there might decide to pick up some tools and have a go for yourself. Okay, let's get on with the build. What I will say first of all is make sure you've got the copy of the service manual in front of you. I'll put a download link in the description below, or if you're a member of the Facebook group, if you go to the file section, you will find the document there, little PDF you can download and print off. You don't necessarily need it, but it's good to have it. In theory, it tells you where you want to oil. I'm not really going to be talking about oil in this particular video. It's just really a taster to show you that you can disassemble a 6309 and then reassemble it. All the oiling and the cleaning and things are separate to this. I personally have already pre-ordered some of these parts, and I've certainly cleaned them all in my ultrasonic. I have intentions to use this movement once we've done with it in the video in a different watch. But like I say, at the moment this is just to show you where the parts go, how to fit them, and hopefully the movement will run at the end of it. So the first thing we should be putting in is the center wheel, and the center wheel is going to go in this hole here. The center wheel itself is this particular, it's hard to show you and get it focused. Some of the wheels, if you've not looked at them before, look very similar. This center wheel basically has a hole running all the way through it, unlike the fourth wheel, which is, as you can see, it's got a long bit on it that actually goes through the center wheel. So all we're going to do with this is put it in with the long bit pointing through the hole. Now, I'm always going to tell you that I'm slightly hampered by the camera, so it takes me a minute or two just to get used to trying to do this from an angle, basically. Okay, once the center wheel is in place, as you can see here, we then have to install the center wheel bridge. At this point as well, I've just realized I've not got my finger cuts on. Center wheel bridge looks like this. Okay, you've got a recess. This is where the screw will go to hold it in place. It's got a recess in it. So you're not putting it that side where you can see where the wheel would be. It's this side up. Okay. It's got these little retaining pins here, so it knows it's when it's sitting in place. You can also very delicately try and touch the wheel just to make sure it moves. I'm happy with that as it is. If I was oiling, I use two types of oil at the moment. There are many types of oils you should use, but I'm only using two. They're both from Mobius. Again, if you've got the service sheet in front of you, everything with an orange type of arrow, I'm using Sinterlube 9010, and for all the ones with the green arrow, this is unlabeled for me in this little bottle here. It's a lot thicker oil, and this is Mobius D5, which I believe has now been superseded by something else. The thicker oil is just to keep it in place on high friction areas. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is install the screw for the centre wheel bridge. Tightness. You are not trying to force these and get them really super tight, just enough to nip them up. Okay, not loose, because obviously they're going to come loose, but over tightening is going to put pressure potentially on the jewels, and if you put pressure on the jewels, they will ultimately break. At this point, I like to put in the escape wheel, and this is the escape wheel here. A very small pivot on the bottom. Camera can't focus that very well, just sort of there, and the gear on the top. Now this can be quite fiddly, and it's important to try and get the pivot into the jewel hole, and we are putting it in this hole here. Like so. Okay, you might want to try and look at it from it. I can't show you because the camera's in the way, but if you get down at eye line, just to make sure that the escape wheel is sitting nice and flat. If it's not, we'll find out later on when we try and put the train wheel bridge on, it won't fit properly, and sometimes you have to just give them a little nudge with the tweezers just to let it fit. Okay, now that's in place, I will be putting the barrel in. At this point I would normally be putting a little bit of oil, D5 oil, in the where the arbor goes there. So this is the barrel. This again I would oil here, and I would oil here. And you want that side down, and the bit with the hole in, which is where the ratchet wheel will go, facing upwards. And again, we're just going to drop that into there like so. Already you can try and test it, just be delicately move that. You can see the center wheel going round. Next wheel is the third wheel. This is the third wheel. It's the small one. It's got a gear at the bottom and the pivot at the top, and that will be going in this hole here with the gear facing down. No oiling involved on this one. Sometimes it doesn't go in straight away and you just have to play with it a little bit, but you want it to be sitting pretty flat on the top there. And then once again, I'm going to have to turn this. If we are moving the wheel, again we can see them moving. Okay, always keep testing it like that and you won't go too far wrong. The last of the gears, the last of the wheels, is the fourth wheel, which is this one, the long one. And that is going to go through the hole at the top there, where the jewel is, and through the centre wheel. Can be a little bit fiddly, this one as well. You've got to be quite accurate, but once you're in place like that, it will just fall into position. And then that is engaging into the escape wheel as well. Okay. We can test it. We have to be a little bit more careful now, because now the escape is in. The escape will like to, so now this wheel is in and it's interacting with the escape. It'll try and nudge it out if you're not careful. Alright, so we're just seeing there that it's spinning a little bit, and I'm happy with that that's sitting correctly. The next thing is the click. And the click is what holds the tension of the mainspring. This long thing here can be quite tricky to if it's your first attempt. the, where's my screwdriver? So this bit here is going to be sitting in this hole here, but upright. So you've got to get a good hold of it like I've got there, and you want to tilt it up, line it up with the hole, which is quite difficult from my angle. I've gone on the wrong side of this, as you can see, so that's no good to me. Okay, so normally in a normal position it would be sitting here. It rests on this part of the main plate, but it'll hamper you when you try and put the train wheel bridge on the top. So to counteract this, as it says in the service manual, is just to bend it to the next bit. Oops. And as you can see, for me it's jumped out. I don't seem to be having much luck with this one. Okay. Slight little edit there, as you can see now. So a little bit of a bend in it, and it's hooked on around there. It's not essential that you do this. I have done it where it was before and then just sort of pulled it out of the way when I put the cover on, but for your first attempt you want to make sure that nothing's going to really get in your way too much. So now we're on to the interesting part, which is the train wheel bridge, and this has to line up absolutely spot on, or else the train wheels won't work. It might sound a bit scary, but it's not all that scary. It just means that you might have to fiddle around a little bit. Obviously that is going to go over the barrel. It's a bit of a steady hand. I personally will come down at a little bit of an angle. You have to excuse my fingers, it's really not good practice for me to using this, but so as you can see, this has got a little bit of rock in it, so it's not quite right. Now what I will do is I'll quickly put on my finger cups that I was supposed to put on at the start. And that allows me to touch it a bit. Okay, so what's happened there is the pivots have just found their required jewels or holes. I'm not firmly pressing down, but I've just pressed down enough. Just try and zoom out a little bit there. So to test this before we put a screw in, again, just use your tweezers onto the barrel. You turn it either way, and what you'll see is, let's see if I can zoom in, it's important to see the escape move, not just the other wheels. Okay, that way you know that everything is in position. It feels nice and smooth. You don't want to hear it clunking or anything like that. Okay, now I'm going to keep my finger on it. I'm going to install the screws. And there's one. As I said in my other videos, make sure that you've got plenty of room around you, a lot of light. Certainly when you're installing screws, try to do them one at a time. I found that if I put them all in position and then start screwing, and I slip with the screwdriver and I nudge everything, so I nudge the train wheel bridge here, it might move, all the screws get scattered around, and if you're unlucky, you've lost one. And if you lose a screw, well, you're either asking us guys in the forum if anyone's got a spare one, or you're looking for a donor movement. Obviously I've now got 2 screws in, so I've taken my finger off. I don't need to keep it in position. So they're all in. Acid test again. Make sure that the wheels are moving freely. And at this point, take the tension off the click. It'll automatically go into where it's supposed to go. Okay, so that's all the train wheels installed. We're on a roll here, we're doing quite well. The next thing I want to put on is the ratchet wheel, which sits on top of the barrel and interacts with the click to hold the tension of the spring. And we got a recess which goes down. It's also got a square, as you can see, it's like a square hole, so that will line up. I'll put that in the middle so you can see there, and install that screw onto the top of that one. What you'll now find now is that the moment I start turning the screw, it starts turning the tension on the barrel. Subsequently, because the pallet fork is not installed, there's nothing to hold the tension. So as you can see, the wheels want to go round and you won't be able to tighten the screw very well. I tend to just hold it with my finger ever so slightly. You don't need to over tighten this one, just enough to give it a little bit of a pinch. And again, now we can test. So we can put this is the mainspring now, we can wind the mainspring a little bit. You can hear it whistling. I can't hear any clunking. Everything's sitting exactly as it should be. So there we are, that's quite a lot done already. The next bit is to put the pallet fork in. Now this can be quite a fiddly task. I remember the first time I did this, I would probably say that to actually get the pallet fork in position and then the bridge it covers that holds it in place may have taken me about an hour. It was quite fiddly. Right, so here's the pallet. Again, if we were to be servicing it properly, we would be oiling the jewels. So we have the exit stone here and the other one, and we're oiling them right on the very tip, certainly on the exit one, and then you would rotate a few gears, if you like, of the escape wheel, and the oil would start to coat the escape, and then you'd put a little bit more on. And again, for that you need the Mobius 9010. So hopefully the camera will focus on that. We are looking for the longer end to go down, the shorter end to go up, and we're going in this jewel hole here. Okay, so right in the centre of that is a tiny hole where the pivot will sit, and it isn't always easy to get it in and line it up, but it's a lot of little gentle taps. For me, that is already in, I can tell. Yep. Sometimes though it moves again as soon as you try and put the bridge in. Again, the bridge can be quite a little ordeal because it's quite easy to knock something I tend to just get it like this, and I'm going to try and line it up and hold it a bit better. And try and line the hole up like that, and ever so gently get it into position. I've just heard that slightly click. You want to make sure there's no rock, so you can see I'm sort of tapping it, making sure that that looks okay, and you can even interact with the escape there, making sure that that feels nice and loose. Incidentally, no oiling. So no oiling. This is a jewel that you do not oil at all. Equally on the other side. Just lots of cleaning of the ultrasonics and body coat, and even pegwood if needed. You know, the escape and the pallet are really, really important to have spotless if you can. Certainly if you want to do it properly. So now we're just going to install the screws. Got the wrong size screwdriver for it this time, picked the wrong one up. It's always good to have a few screwdrivers and try and keep the flat end to the size of the screw. That way you're minimising slippage. Also trying to get them so they're dead in line. If they're on an angle, you run the risk of them not engaging with the threads or popping out. Okay, so I'm going to do another test, and that feels okay. Now what I'll do is I'll put some power into the spring, and if I've done it right, what we'll see now is that it clicks across with a minimum of effort. Hopefully, I'll zoom in case you can't see that. So I've just got an oiler here. This is where the impulse jewel will sit when you put the balance on, and obviously releases the power. There. So I'm quite happy with that. If it's not moving around like that, then you haven't got it on right. It's as simple as that. If it feels stiff, then it's not the pallet is not sitting in its pivots. Unscrew it, start again. Okay, so if you've got this far, congratulations, because we're at the more interesting part now, which is putting the balance on. The balance obviously is the really, really important part of the watch itself. So you want to make sure you don't damage it in any way. Excuse me, I'm just getting it out of my container. So here's my balance and the screw. Now you would want to normally examine your balance, unless you know your watch was running beforehand and running okay. You want to make sure that these coils are all nice and concentric, that there's no dirt or muck where the cores might be sticking together. They quite often get magnetized, so you have to demagnetize them, but they also get a bit of dirt or a bit of oil on them and get sticky, and when they get sticky, the watch either doesn't run or it'll run really, really, really fast. I know that this balance is pretty good. I've already had a look at it. So to put it on, certainly for me, this is how I would do it. I move the pallet to that side and I carefully pick it up and turn it over and I'm gonna kind of, it's hard for me to show you what I'm doing, just slide it in and let go, and then I'm just going to nudge it, try and get the top bit in place, and the bottom is still not sitting right. Okay, that's not quite right. It's this strange angle that I have to come at, which is throwing me a little bit here. So do forgive me. Now it's on, but the impulse jewel is in the wrong position. And there we are. So it's already running, as you can see, quite happily. And we'll install the screw onto the top. Like so. When you see that, if you're at that stage and it's your first time, I think you'll have the biggest smile you've had in all your achievements within watch tinkering. For me, when I got to this stage the first time, I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe that with my own hands I'd taken something that didn't run, actually mine didn't run, and it fired up and looked not dissimilar to that, and I was absolutely over the moon. And to be fair, that's probably what drove me to then get very obsessed, certainly with Seiko movements, and taking them apart and putting them back together, and taking them apart and putting them back together. I get great satisfaction out of seeing them run again. They don't always, has to be said. I've got a few that have let me down, and it's nearly always the balance that's letting me down. I buy things now deliberately at non-runners, and often taking a bit of a chance that I can fix them. I can certainly clean them and put them back together again, but they don't always run, which leaves me then looking for a donor. While I'm on about the balance, what did happen, and I sort of touched on it, is the pivot, it sat in its pivots, or in its jewels should I say, and when I tried to turn the balance wheel, you could feel resistance. So it would turn one way, it wouldn't turn the other, and it's the impulse jewel. So the impulse jewel that's at the bottom, which has to sit in the pallet, was on the wrong side of it, so it wasn't in the middle, and it was stopping it. So if you feel that, take it off. Don't try and force it, because if you force it, you could break or damage the impulse jewel, and then you've undone all the work that you'd set out to do. Right, okay, so the next part is to put the automatic framework on, which is what is going to basically automatically wind the spring. And this is the framework, the top bit where the oscillating weight would sit. Now normally we'd be taking this apart, and we'd be cleaning it, and we'll be oiling it, and maybe I'll do a supplemental at the end of the second video to show this being disassembled. I just feel that I'm trying to do these videos for people who've not tried before, and it can be a little bit fiddly. Certainly to get it all back in place, you have what's called the pawl levers here. Okay, there's one there, all part of the same thing. The oscillating weight goes around the bearings and moves this, and this moves what's called the transmission wheel, which I'll bring into shot here. There's the transmission wheel, and that then winds the ratchet wheel here. These pawl levers can be damaged very, very easily. They've just got little hooks on the end which hook onto the gears on the side of this wheel and hold it in place. Just again, stop it all from, well, to drive the power. So at the moment I would suggest we just leave this as it is and try to reinstall it. And the way to do that is, first of all, we install the transmission wheel back into the movement. There's one side, here's the other. So the side with the big gear on it that you can see there in the shot, that's going to go down and it's going to go in this jewel here. This is an oiling point again, and I will probably take this watch apart again and re-oil it for when I want to put it in the watch that I want to put it in. So that's going to sit in there, and the gear, you could see, it will interact with the transmission wheel here. So once you think that's sitting in nicely, we will pick this up and we'll line it up and we'll place it like so. So the screw holes, they're a little bit raised on the train wheel bridge, so this finds its location quite easily. If you've watched the disassembly videos, you'll remember that I'm missing a screw. So I've only got two at the moment. I have got spares. I just didn't prepare myself very well for the video that I'm shooting now, so for the time being I will just install two of these. There's one, and I'll do the other one over here. Like so. Now what happens now is that the pull lever is quite possibly not engaged onto the transmission wheel, and I have to get an old oiler, and that's what these holes are for here, is just to flick them. It's hard for me to show you that. I don't know if I zoom in you'll be able to see. So I'm trying to put that one in position. And in actual fact I can see that I've got it trapped, so not very professional of me. There. You didn't see that, fortunately that was out of shot, but the pull lever there just got stuck on the top when I put the plate down. As you can see now when I'm moving it, all looks to be in position. I'll just tighten that and zoom back out. If you wanted to double check that things are working at this point, you can reattach the oscillating weight. Although we will need to take it back off again in order to do the calendar works, because otherwise it will be hampering. But just if you wanted to test that everything is working to wind the mainspring, then you put your oscillating weight back on the top. Again, please excuse my fingers. There. So what we're looking at here is for all the wheels to go round, and you will see that the ratchet wheel goes and the click keeps clicking over the gears. So again, if I try and zoom in, we're just testing. As you can see, it's moving. If you don't see that movement, it's not winding the power into the mainspring and you've got a problem, which could be just the pull levers are not connected. Could be worse, the pull levers aren't working because the teeth at the end of them have gone, or there might be something else wrong. So you just take it apart and rebuild it. So if you've got this far and your watch is running, congratulations. I'll be really pleased if somebody's followed along to this video and got results. It'll make doing this worthwhile for me. We will take this off, as I said, so the next video will be the calendar works, and this will get in the way of the movement holder, so it's always best to remove it, and I will remove it. If you've got any questions, obviously leave it in the comments, or join the Facebook group Retro and Vintage Watches and Restorations, where you'll find me and everybody else in there. You can ask questions to your heart's content in there, and I'll try and answer anything that you ask. If you've liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more. Thank you very much for watching.